Dile. This is Sakina Bhatt and welcome to Tibet This Week, a weekly feature in English about this week's news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines first. His Holiness the Dalai Lama reaffirms middle way policy as realistic approach. Himachal Pradesh is a rose in India's garden, says CTA President Dr. Lobsang Singye. China limits religious freedom in Tibet, says US Department's annual report. French Senate's Tibet group condemns China's sentencing of Tashi Wangchuk. On Wednesday this week, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in his meeting with delegates of the first international conference on Umelam Middle Way Approach at Zuglakhang, said that the middle way approach is the most practical approach and mutually beneficial to both the Tibetan and the Chinese. Calling middle way approach the pursuit of a mutually acceptable and beneficial solution through dialogue in the spirit of reconciliation and compromise, His Holiness said that it does not seek independence of Tibet but strives for a solution within the framework of the People's Republic of China.
우메람사 탐고다 뒤도 고추래 얘네 게 뒤도 식디 셰기메 난소 거야데 디기 고유스 디셰베 엔 디기사데 가르스 가지 계정해 줘 엔다 디기고 더 르보 먹고 연구르신 데 밤보르 셴네 데네 갈레갈레리아 에네 랑조 랑제 쪽이메 안다 지 별이야 시준 진심을 뒤에 드기면도 다 데네 인도사는 가서 타니스 몰롱 지금 우메람사 다 도스는 리베 차브레.
Explaining that the policy change helped in establishing the first contact with China after coming to exile, the Tibetan spiritual leader also mentioned that the middle way approach has received endorsement and solid support from a large number of Chinese scholars, activists, writers and public personalities. His Holiness said that one of the most important achievements of the delegation visit was the reinforcement of unity between Tibetans inside Tibet and those in exile. CTA President Dr. Lobsang Singye attended the Samas Bharat's Excellence Award 2018 as the chief guest in Dharamshala on Thursday last week. The ceremony was organized by Samas Bharat News magazine to honor the contribution of distinguished individuals towards social welfare and development in India. In his address, CTA President Dr. Lobsang Singye spoke about India's generosity and love towards the Tibetan people and the Tibetan people's deep gratitude to India. Highlighting Himachal Pradesh in particular, especially the town of Dharamshala, for hosting His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Central Tibetan Administration for the last 6 decades, he said, "India is a big garden filled with beautiful flowers. However, for the Tibetan people, Himachal Pradesh is the rose in this rich garden which has shared its beauty and fragrance with us." Dr. Singye also spoke about His Holiness the Dalai Lama's admiration for India and his rich ancient knowledge. The US State Department released its International Religious Freedom Report 2017 on Tuesday this week. The report highlighted China's continued denial of religious freedom in Tibet and the growing interference by government bodies and Chinese administrative authorities in the daily religious practices of Tibetan Buddhist monasteries and nunneries. The report noted forced disappearance, physical abuse, prolonged detention without trial, and arrest of individuals due to their religious practices. It also reported increased repression around politically sensitive events and religious anniversaries such as His Holiness the Dalai Lama's birthday in Tibet. The report touched on the issue of Chinese interference in the age-old tradition of selecting Tibetan reincarnate lamas and tulkus. Topics such as self-immolation protest and China's demolition of Yachenkhar and Larungkhar were also highlighted. The report further stated that US officials have repeatedly raised Tibetan religious freedom issues with Chinese government counterparts at multiple levels, such as the Chinese government's refusal to engage in dialogue with the Dalai Lama. It also talked about the issue of access to Tibet for American diplomats and officials. The report stressed the US government's repeated pressures on China to respect religious freedom for all faiths and to allow Tibetans to preserve, practice, teach, and develop their religious traditions and language without interference from the government. On Friday last week, the International Information Tibet Group in the French Senate condemned China's sentencing of Tashi Wangchuk with a 5-year imprisonment. The statement reads, "At the announcement of the verdict of the trial of Mr. Tashi Wangchuk, the president of International Information Tibet Group, Mr. Michel Raisin, and members of this group are deeply shocked by his sentencing to 5 years in prison for incitement to separatism. As members and representatives of the nation committed to the defense of human rights, members International Information Tibet Group deplore that rights are fundamental as culture, education, or freedom of expression are criminalized in political affairs." So much for this week. See you next time and have a great weekend.